Yep, that was my daughter and her friend making beautiful music at midnight. So, all right. So let's get into my top 10. My top 10 movies of 2021. First, I have an honorable mention. And it's going to be a little weird that this movie did not make the top 10. Most top 10 lists that I've seen, this movie made the top 10, but it didn't quite make it for me. And that's only because it's kind of half a movie. And that's Dune. So if I had seen the second half, this might be higher. This might be at the top of the list. But the reality is I haven't, it's half a movie. And this movie was mostly build up. It had some cool stuff with Jason Momoa's character. Timothée Chalamet did a great job. Zendaya was barely in it, but I was really engaged with her character as well. There was so much good stuff in here. It was a beautiful movie. But for me, there wasn't enough in it for me to say, yes, this is one of my top 10 movies of the year. So honorable mention is Dune. Now, I also want to point out that I'm not a professional movie critic. This top 10 list is not the objective best movies of the year. I'm not that person. I'm the person who's going to say, these are the 10 movies that I enjoyed the most this year. The 10 movies that hit me the best this year. So your list is going to look completely different, and that's perfectly fine. But for me, these are the top 10 that got me loving movies this year. So here we go. Number 10 is A Quiet Place Part 2. I love the first Quiet Place. The first Quiet Place the year it came out, I think it was my first or second favorite movie that year. This one, I loved it up until the ending. The ending kind of brought it down a few notches, and that's just because I felt like everything was unresolved at the end. It's like they just decided to end it. And we didn't know what happened with all the characters, whether or not everybody was able to reunite. There was too many questions left at the end of A Quiet Place 2, and that really affected my enjoyment of it, because you can do a lot of stuff wrong in your movie, but if you stick the landing, it can leave a wonderful taste in your mouth, and you can love that movie. On the flip side of that, you can do everything right, but if you don't stick the landing, you can feel not as good about that movie. And that's how The Quiet Place 2 was for me. I feel like they did everything right, and then they just weren't able to quite stick that landing. So Quiet Place 2 is number 10. All right, number 9. Number 9 is technically 3 movies, but I picked out the one that's my favorite, and that's Fear Street 1978. So I loved all 3 of the Fear Street movies. The third one was pretty weak, if we're being honest. But as a trilogy, it worked really well. But Fear Street 1978 caught that 80s vibe, even though it took place in 78. It caught that vibe that I'm looking for a movie set in that time period. And it definitely captured that Friday the 13th, gringy, kind of old school slasher movie. And on that, in that regard, I thought it was a very well done movie, and it built on the lore that they established in the first one, and I just thought it was a very strong movie. So Fear Street 1978 is number 9. All right, number 8. Number 8 is No Time to Die, and I am not a huge James Bond fan. I'm just not. I have a hard time getting into the movies, especially the older ones. Now, I like Dr. No for what it is. I thought Goldfinger was okay, but when you really start getting into like the Roger Moore era, and you start really diving into the old Bond films, I find that there's more that I don't like than there are that I like. And I kind of feel the same way about even the modern Bond movies, the Daniel Craig movies. I thought Skyfall was really good. I thought Casino Royale was really good. But Spectre and Quantum of Solace, I thought were just bad movies. Spectre bored me. I saw Spectre in the theaters and I almost fell asleep. But No Time to Die was a movie that wrapped up an ongoing Bond storyline. And I don't think we've ever gotten that in a Bond movie, where we wrapped up an actor's tenure in Bond. And I know the ending was kind of controversial, but for me, it worked perfect. For me, it was a beautiful ending to this character that's been through a lot of ups and downs throughout his life, and a character that's been through a lot of up and downs in this franchise. But I thought that this was a beautiful way to end it. This is actually the first time I've ever had a Bond movie in my top 10 end of year movies, and I just thought No Time to Die was that strong. So that's number 8. Number 7 is Venom, Let There Be Carnage. This movie knew what it was. It knew that it was a B comic book movie, and it ran with it. It didn't try to overload us with all sorts of lore. Didn't try to overload us with all sorts of connectivity to whether it be the Venomverse or the MCU. It didn't try to overload us with any of that. It just knew what it was. It knew it was a fun comic book action movie, and that's what we got. We got action sequences. We got comedy between Eddie and Venom, and we just got it was a fast-paced, fun adventure, and I really dug it for what it was. I especially liked the relationship between Venom and Eddie. I thought that was very well done. So, Venom, Let There Be Carnage is number 7. Number 6. Number 6 is one that I don't think is on a lot of people's list, and I loved it, and that is 8-Bit Christmas. It was a direct to HBO Max release. It was a Christmas movie, obviously, but for me, this was the Christmas story for a new generation. This was my generation's Christmas story. So when we tell our Christmas story to our kids, it's going to be a version of this. For me, it was the Super Nintendo. I wanted the Super Nintendo so bad that my entire Christmas that year was wrapped up around getting the Super Nintendo. And again, it mirrors this movie. This movie caught all the nostalgia feelings that I wanted from a movie set in that time period in the early 80s, but it also caught my childhood personally. On a personal level, it caught my childhood, and I saw so much of myself wrapped up into what was happening in this movie. Now, yeah, a lot of it was fantastical. A lot of it was, storytelling, embellishment for storytelling purposes. But at its heart, it was a Christmas story for a new generation, and I adored it. So 8-Bit Christmas is number 6. Number 5. Number 5 is Free Guy. I did not expect Free Guy to be as good as it was. I thought that it would be kind of a throwaway Ryan Reynolds comedy like The Hitman's Bodyguard or something along those lines. And instead, what we got was a movie that analyzed not just the current video gaming world that we live in, which, Ready Player One tackled some of those themes. Ready Player One tackled several of the same themes as Free Guy did, but what Free Guy tackled was relationships between people, and how those relationships exist. And for me, yeah, it had the Ryan Reynolds comedy that we were all expecting, but it also had heartfelt moments where you felt for the characters, even the digital characters. You felt for all of them. And I felt that Free Guy was a breath of fresh air in the summer movie season. So that was my number 5. All right, number 4. Number 4 was The Suicide Squad. I'm a big James Gunn fan, so it's probably no surprise that The Suicide Squad is so high on my list, but I thought The Suicide Squad was so much fun. Does it feel separate from the rest of the DCEU? Absolutely. It does not feel like it's connected to Batman vs. Superman or Justice League or anything of that nature, but it doesn't have to be. As a standalone Suicide Squad movie, I thought that it hit all the right notes, and it was just zany enough to make the ultra-violence feel almost cartoonish, while at the same time enjoyable. I really like the Suicide Squad. I thought it hit all the right notes, and that's why it's number 4. Number 3. All right, this is where the controversy is going to come in because a lot of people have this at number 1. But number 3 for me is Spider-Man No Way Home. Very good movie. Very good movie. I enjoyed it immensely. All the guests from other franchises that joined Tom Holland's Spider-Man, whether it be villains or anybody else, I thought it was phenomenal. It was so much fun. It hit all the right nostalgic pings while at the same time telling a very strong story on its own. I did feel like it had some pacing issues in the first part, especially in the first half. Some of the logic of it didn't really make sense. Especially, why did this intelligent guy, Dr. Strange, not take the time to discuss this with Peter to try to figure out a different solution? Like, what if Mysterio never existed? or everybody forgot Mysterio. You know, there was better solutions than what they came up with, and I feel like the ending was also a little problematic moving forward. How is this going to work? Because Peter Parker is so established with so many people as Spider-Man. How is this going to work moving forward? But so much of the movie was so wonderful that it kind of makes me forget the flaws. And as Tony Stark says in Avengers Endgame, I only remember the good stuff. So that is Spider-Man No Way Home. Great movie. Number two is Ghostbusters Afterlife. I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan, and for me, Ghostbusters Afterlife hit every note perfectly. It honored the original, while at the same time telling a story that stands on its own and taking it into the next phase of Ghostbusters storytelling. I thought it was phenomenal. I loved it. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was fun, and I thought it was, more important than anything, respectful. So that's number two. But my number one movie of 2021 is Zack Snyder's Justice League. I loved it. This was a case where a studio, and by the way, I've got major problems with how the WB is handling their DC universe. Major problems. But for a studio to be able to let Zack Snyder finish his vision in the way that they did, and for him to bring this 4-hour epic to the screen and tell this mature comic book story with deep themes, long form storytelling, I thought that Zack Snyder's Justice League was amazing. I thought it was beautiful, and I got nothing against the MCU. But the MCU, I love the MCU. Everybody knows I love the MCU. But the MCU is very palatable. You know, 4-year-olds can love it, 90-year-olds can love it, and everybody in between. It is made to be palatable. It's made for everybody. It's made to, the MCU is meant to appeal to the broadest range possible. And that's great. Like I said, I love the MCU. That's not a criticism. But it's nice that not everybody tries to be the MCU. And Zack Snyder wasn't trying to be the MCU when he made this. He was making a movie that was not meant to be palatable for 5-year-olds. I don't know any 5-year-olds that are, you know, like my daughter Anya, she's 8. She's not into Justice League. She'll sit down and watch an MCU movie, but she doesn't want to watch Justice League. Heck, my son, who's 13, he is not into Justice League. He loves the MCU, but he's not into Justice League. This is very mature storytelling. It's for people my age. I loved it. I thought it was beautiful, and it's a shame that it does not look like the Snyderverse is going to continue. So Zack Snyder's Justice League was my number one movie of 2021.